we all have our challenges in our lives, and they're all very specific to what's going on with us. And the opportunity that we have is to look deeply into them and see what's unfolding in the midst of the challenge that gives us opportunity for like the great awakening, the great freedom, the great joy. Like, where does the great come from? Right in the midst of that thing being the exact same way. Like, not when it's over. People used to say, you'll get back to your normal life. Like we've been saying about COVID. When is it going to be over? I want to get back to normal. And it's like, well, you know what? What if it never is?
Right. You can just wait around for things to get back to normal. And, you know, I mean, let's live our life now. That's why the show is on, like, create a life you love living now. Welcome to Onward Live, a live stream focused on encouraging you to create a life you love living now. Let's go beyond success to significance. Being clear on our why is crucial. It requires doing the inner work, finding ourselves, getting to know ourselves, embracing our inner child, shedding social conditioning, and letting go of perfect. We know obstacles make us stronger. We can dream big and take action. Believe you can, and you're halfway there. I invite you to tune in every week and engage with me and my inspiring guests. Invite your friends. Let's make time for what matters most in our lives. Let's move onward together. Hi, everybody. I'm excited to bring to you Dr. Valerie René Sheppard. She and I met back in February at a diversity, equity, and inclusion event that the Navy had. We were both speakers at that event, and we just hit it off right away. And she gave me her book, which I've been reading, and it's such a good book, and we just have a lot in common. So I thought, I've got to have Valerie on the show. So Valerie is a stroke survivor, a self-mastery expert. She's a certified trainer, and she's the CEO of the Hartley Center. And she helps people live with more courage, more confidence, and inner peace and happiness, using the wisdom in her multi-award-winning #1 international bestseller, Living Happy to Be Me. And I'm going to bring Valerie in right now. So let's see. Valerie, welcome.
Hey. Hi, Emily. Hi. How's it going out there, everybody? Emily, it's so good to see you again. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, great to see you too, Valerie. It's, been a while since we talked, but I've been reading your book and I just love it so much. I think I've messaged you about that. Like, oh, I love this, what you wrote. I love this, what you wrote. And everything just resonates with me.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I just read a little bit about your background. Do you mind telling us a little bit more, and what, you can go into why you wrote the book. Tell us a little bit about your history. I know you were raised by a Marine.
Bye, baby. Yes. Career Marine, father, mother in the civilian Department of Defense, high discipline household. I didn't have my hair high and tight, but my brother did. And we were pretty much the military culture in the family. Travel a lot. I've lived in 10 states now and moved many, many times. Got all the benefits of that and had some of the hardship of that kind of a lifestyle. Is I kind of call Virginia home. That's where I went to undergrad. I got my MBA at Syracuse University, and I just received my PhD in consciousness and human potential.
That's awesome. Where do you, I didn't even know that there was an ability to get a PhD in consciousness and human potential. Is that kind of a new field?
No, there actually are several different places that you can get one. So like Maharishi University, and I got mine from Gateway University. It just depends. You have to look for universities that are offering study in sort of like noetic sciences, something beyond typical science or mastery with the left brain cognitive self. Gateway actually is a school for the study of higher consciousness. So they have all kinds of courses that are focused on that. Even conscious entrepreneurship, though, there are PhDs in that, like bringing consciousness into a maybe more traditional role of being an entrepreneur, which I like as well. But I'm into driving potential.
So, like, I mean, I lived most of my life in my left.
Hello. We're in the same club. Yeah.
Can you explain the difference? So just tell us, what's the difference between left brain, right brain? When I say I live most of my life in my left brain and you agree, what do you mean by that? What do we mean by that?
So I remember it by the L. Left brain stands for logic. So the logical brain, the left brain, is more in control of our logic, our analytics. It's our we memory and sorting and processing and analyzing. Those are considered left brain skill sets. The right brain and the left brain can also be associated with the divine masculine energy, the doingness, the getting things done, the making things happen kind of stuff is considered left brain. Mm-hmm. The right brain is more responsible for creative pursuits, sort of the, if left brain, if you think of it as very right edges, right brain would be more coloring outside the lines, coloring at all, like seeing color, feeling that sort of expansiveness of the non-linear aspects of life, associated with the divine feminine, which is more of a waiting energy, an energy of more things unfolding, creatively coming together, the vessel that holds as the womb. Those kinds of things are more associated with the right brain.
Yeah. So left brain is like achieving through pushing and logic and, and for me, military, like following the rules, staying within the lines, coloring within the lines. That's kind of me, and the doing, and a lot of masculine energy. I went to the Naval Academy, 6th class of women to graduate, and then worked in a male dominated career. You had to kind of use that masculine energy in order to survive.
Yes. And I think the beautiful thing is that we both have both. I mean, we all have both. Mm-hmm. So you have both masculine, you have feminine. The idea is to know when you're leveraging which to do whatever it is you're called to do in your life at any given moment. So if you're like you and I, we leverage left brain masculine almost all the time. And for me, maybe even exclusively, right? It's like, that's what I was about because that's what I understood was how I had to be successful.
Right. And where were you working? You were in commercial industry, right? I mean,
well, I worked for nonprofits. I worked in corporate America. When I left corporate, I was a vice president. And so in those spaces, masculine energy, especially the more senior levels I rose, the more masculine it was. And as we discussed in our DE&I workshop, the more white male it was. And then when you bring in the color ladder, I'm a Black female, which historically, sociologically is at the bottom. And so inside me was this energy of I have to prove and struggle and strive and like make sure they see me or I'll never get anywhere. Like I have to get out there and like show them what I'm made of. And so when the show them what I'm made of came together with everything else, it came in very masculine, very driven. I used to say that I've got this drill sergeant energy that I got from my father, and not as a good, bad, right, or wrong. It just is and is. And that was in there. And that was a part of how I expressed myself in lots of places that I traveled.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a Facebook user here that commented, one of my goals this year was to stop operating so much of my masculine energy. It's so hard since it's what I'm used to. What would you recommend to somebody who's trying to get more into their feminine energy? Like, what are some tips that you have for how they could do that?
So I'm demonstrating one of the tips.
And if you're like maybe you're like, say something, keep going, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
why isn't she talking? Why isn't she answering? She must not have heard it. She didn't hear Emily. She doesn't understand. She doesn't know no, that's not what's going on. I'm just dropping into my divine feminine, which is, you notice my voice dropped. I don't have to project quite as much. That's a masculine energy, making sure you heard me. That's masculine energy. Feminine energy is somewhat softer, still can be strong, just in a softer variation of the theme. The feminine energy kind of waits to receive. Oh, did I hear the whole message? Is Emily finished talking before I get my blah, blah, blah in? I mean, how many times are you in meetings and people are talking over you? Well, a lot of times it can be women talking over other people because they're trying to be heard. And other times it's men because they're talking over the women because there's something else going on. But so to answer your question, the feminine energy is a more receiving energy. So one thing you can do is exactly that. Count to 10 before you open your mouth and offer something. Count to 5 if that's as far as you can get before you're like, I have to speak. And if you start getting impatient, like, oh my God, if I don't speak, they'll think I'm an idiot. That's coming from you. When you tell people, I'm going to take a pause between the questions just so I can hear myself think, many people are like, oh my God, that's so nice. Like this person, I would love to do this. First thing is to just quiet yourself, and the mighty mind will try and machinate you into doing something. And you can just take a deep breath. Breathing is one of the most powerful tools I use for all of my stuff. Breathe. Just take a deep breath. Take 3 if you can, then take 2 more, and then decide what comes next. I think the other thing for the feminine is notice when your language is betraying you. Like if I'm trying to drop into my feminine, but all the time I'm saying, I'm going to make it happen. I got to do more. When is this going to get done? Then we're in a hyper relationship with the masculine aspects of life, which are doing and going and getting things done, as opposed to, I wonder what would happen if I did nothing. I think I'm going to just percolate on that for a couple of days.
Couple of days? You didn't say like a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes. So what happens when you let it percolate or when you do that? I mean, how do you get stuff done?
Oh, it's a beautiful dance between both. So what I'm talking about is balancing your masculine and feminine. So bringing your feminine energy up to meet your overactive or hyperactive masculine. So driving your masculine down, allowing your feminine to come up. So for someone who's overindulged in the masculine, like I was, maybe like you were, Emily, hearing someone say, wait for 2 days is like, oh my gosh, that's my whole world would end.
There you go. Doing nothing would give me anxiety, LOL, but it's good advice, says the Facebook user.
Yeah. And it's not really necessarily doing nothing. I mean, that's not exactly what I said. I just said, wait on making that one move. Wait on making major decisions. Maybe the decision, having to have a decision every time a question comes in, is very masculine. Feminine would be, I think I want to let that roll around in my bones a little bit. I think I want to love the question just as much as I love getting to an answer.
And so when you start to get that anxiety, if you're wanting to try to get more into your feminine energy, but you start to get that anxiety, breathing, I think, is one of your tips, right?
Take a deep breath. Yeah. And then to make peace with where that anxiety is coming from is you got to go into the anxiety. So some of these are surface level tips and tools. Then there's the deeper level. So if it constantly keeps coming up, every time you try to relax into something, something's pushing you. You're relaxing into a new way of being, and then something keeps dragging you back, like in The Godfather. They keep pulling me back in. So if that's happening, then that's a signal from you to you, for you, about you, that you're hooked in at a deeper level, which is no big deal. All of us are at some point. So you then want to go below the surface and say, okay, what is this? So I had to do layers of sort of unpacking where I could see, okay, the reason I'm pushing so hard is because I don't think it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Why don't I believe it's going to happen? Well, because it's hard for things to happen for a woman. Where did that come from? Well, I heard this conditioning, or I learned this, like one of the things I used to grow up with is Black people have to work twice as hard to get half as much. Nobody sat down and told me that, but the signs were everywhere. And I could hear the adults talking about it between themselves. So as a young girl, children don't have to be sat down and taught something. They just are picking up from the pings off of their environment. And so a young child would get an interpretation that says, oh, I guess I'm going to have to work twice as hard to get half as much. My brown skin looks like the brown skin of the people who are talking about this. So that could be conditioned pattern of responding to my world that's deep, buried deep within me. So you, at some point, to actually unhook and unravel this at the deepest layers, are going to get a chance to explore what's rolling around in there. That's why I talk about self-mastery, which I define as mastering you in your life so that you can exquisitely manage whatever your life brings your way. And so one of the pillars of self-mastery is self-awareness. And that means not whether I like purple and my favorite movie and what do I like to do on Sunday afternoons, but really like, where did I get these ideas I have about myself? Not necessarily about the world, but where did I get them about me? Because that's what's dictating what's going on in my world.
Wait a second. How is what's going on about you dictating what's going on in your world? I mean, look at all these circumstances that are happening that are outside of your control. I don't understand. Why are you saying that you got to look at yourself when maybe it's your boss, or you've got a stressful job, or, I could go and list them all. And you're saying we got to look at ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm asking that because I've learned it from experience.
Yeah. So have I. I mean, that's why I wrote the book, because I got to a place in my life and I was like, look, I really did have conversations like, I'm a good girl. I've done all the good girl stuff. I go to church. I say my prayers. I do my work. I help other people. I make contributions. I go to, I had my long list of what qualifies me as a good girl and what qualifies somebody else as a good guy. And still, some of the stuff that was showing up was yucky. And the dynamics in the universe are such that there are laws that govern the universe, spiritual laws, somewhat like physical laws. The law of gravity is a physical law. It works 24/7, 365, whether you like it or not, know it or not, understand it or not, or if you even believe it or not.
You like this book, Working with the Law. These are the laws of the universe.
Yes. Exactly. And I mean, for how many years did we not even understand the law of gravity? I mean, we didn't even know it existed, but it still worked, right? Mm-hmm. People weren't just floating around until they said, oh, now I know what gravity is. No, we discovered how gravity works by watching it in operation. So the laws of the universe state in a number of different ways, the way things look on the outside are a reflection of what's going on the inside. And they're in a quantum world, in a metaphysical world, the dynamics of you are what's showing up in your life, not in the whole world, not in everybody's life, but in your life. What you're seeing outside is giving you some insight into what's going on inside you. And so when I got clear on law of reflection, many people may know this from The Secret, law of attraction, cycle of reciprocity, law of karma. When you start to understand Hermetic principles, Hermes Trismegistus, when you start learning like, oh yeah, as above, so below, as within, so without. When you start learning these principles, when you see things on the outside that you're going, I can't stand this. I don't want this anymore. Instead of railing about them and that, and they shouldn't do this, and he should stop saying that, and I'm a victim and they're a perpetrator, which I was doing a lot in my life. I'm a victim of their bad behavior. When I started noticing, well, is it in me first? And that's why it's showing up out there. And I started unraveling stuff inside me. when I raise my vibration, raise my consciousness, raise my perspective, how could this be different than what my mental mind is telling me is going on here? They cut me off. Like, this is a classic one in traffic. That person just cut me off. So maybe from the vantage point of where you're sitting, it looks like that. And remember, your vantage point has all of your mental stories and all of your past wounds and all of your ideologies and your beliefs and what you don't believe. And all of that's a part of you. So when you look outside and you see someone driving fast in front of you, they cut you off. A person who could be in the same position, have a car do the exact same thing, but has a very different mental model, a very different idea of the world, a very different relationship with actions and reactions, might say, oh, look at that being in a hurry. I hope everything's okay in that car. Let me put on my brakes and give them enough room to go ahead of me. And then there could be a whole spectrum of beliefs and activities in between.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody the other day. I won't share who it was or anything, but they were saying that they were in line in Starbucks in their car, and there was somebody ahead of them, and, you know, kind of a fancy car. And, you know, I don't know, they were thinking these thoughts, right, about that person, you know, rich person, you know, got everything going for them, showing off in that car, you know, and then they went up to make their order and found out that the person in the car ahead of them had paid for their order.
How pretty.
Mm-hmm.
How generous.
Yeah.
And then this person who shared this story with you, how were they at receiving? Because oftentimes something comes up when we're actually put in a position to receive. We want to receive, or we talk to ourselves about, I want more. But then things show up and we actually push them away, oftentimes more than we allow them in. Or I'll speak for myself. That's the way I was living before I opened up this body of work to come through me.
I think this person was just kind of feeling bad for, like, was re-examining their thoughts. Like, why was I thinking that? What made me think that, you know, and kind of starting to realize that there are other ways of looking at things. And I'll share my example which was my job was stressing me out. And I knew for sure that when I retired, I was going to have all this free time to be in good shape, you know, all the, you know, go for a bike ride, go for a hike. My life was just going to be so much easier. And it wasn't, because I was busy. And I had a coach that was trying to get me to meditate, and for 40 days straight. And she'd say, what day are you on? I'd say day 1. 2 weeks later, what day are you on? Day 1. Why? Because you don't understand. I'm busy. I got to get up and I got to get stuff done. And so I had to look at myself like, oh, it wasn't the job. It was my thoughts about the job. And then go back and look, like an example of what you were saying, your conditioning. Oh, my mom was always busy. And I kind of remember times where I'd be told, do something, like, got to do something. And she was always busy. So that's soaking into me, right? Be busy, get stuff done.
Yeah, that's
Can't
conditioning.
Relax.
Exactly. And for me, it was not so much that I observed or experienced my mom always being busy, but her words, the words I grew up hearing were about being productive. You have to be productive. You're not going to run the street. You need to be productive. I mean, even when it was things like going to cheerleading practice or soccer practice, there were more productive things than that. That was extracurricular. That wasn't really productivity. That was fun and play. Productivity is studying, chores, like serving. Those are productive activities. And the rest was more frivolous. And so, you know, Emily, it's a very hard realization that I've been kind of making peace with lately, is that I don't know how to have fun. As much as I'm a laughter yoga instructor, I love laughing. I love improv comedy. I do a number of different things. I play archery. I like the piano. And I find myself turning them into chore-like behaviors. It's where I'm getting myself on a regimen, and I'm doing it at a certain level, a certain number of times a week. And I can turn the most frivolous thing into a chore.
Check it off the list.
It's my conditioning. Yeah. It's like, it's no longer fun. And then I find myself going, okay, so that wasn't fun. And it's not the activity. It's not that, oh, Valerie needs to try more activities. I've had people suggest that. Well, you just haven't found the thing that makes you the happiest. And I know that's not the truth. Mm-hmm. I know what is true is that my relationship with all the different options that I have tried, all the different options that are still present and available to me, my relationship with those options is a low vibration relationship where I am not letting myself play in them. I'm not letting myself, although I do this on the piano. I do let myself bang on the piano. I do just, and I don't mean bang, but I mean like, blah, 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 blah. I'm not playing a song. I just want to hear the sound of the keys, and it doesn't matter what order they're played in. And I'm playing predominantly with my left hand. I don't use my right hand that much. So I'm, blah, 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 blah on the piano with my left hand. So I can play there and in other places, but I'm learning, I'm still learning how to have fun and how to cultivate joy in little bits and pieces of stuff here and there, and not trying to make it some big, important task or chore. Be productive with it.
So you have a PhD in consciousness. So why are you still learning?
Well, one of them's my belief system. Another one, curiosity. So one of the things I say that is one of the most important behaviors we can have on this journey of life is curiosity. Mm-hmm. And the curiosity in me is asking what more is possible. Not from a place of lack or I'm not enough. It was before, like, this is so painful. Why is it? Like, I was always asking from a place of emptiness, not from a place of fullness. Now I'm asking from a place of, wow, this is juicy and delicious. And what more is possible? So the curiosity is, if I looked at it this way, what would I see? And if I tried it this way, what would I do? And if I studied this on top of that, what more could I learn? And if I did this, could I serve more? So it's the question. So love the question as much as getting to an answer. What more is possible? But also from the place of trying to see how I can say this in as few words as possible. So what I feel like wants to come through is that the universe itself, this massive container that is holding all that is, this massive container, is constantly moving, shifting, growing. The physics of the universe, as my dear friend Jennifer Huff would say, masterful teacher and owner of the Wide Awakening, the universe is always moving up and out. And so are we as a part of that. Like when we try to make things stay the same, we're actually operating against universal law. Mm-hmm. So if the universe is constantly changing, as are we within the universe, as agents within the universe, then it only stands to reason we aren't standing still. And therefore, there are layers upon layers of us, layers upon layers of understanding to understand. Past conditioning to potentially unravel, parts of us that we'd like to dive deeper into and play more with. And those parts will shift depending on where we are in the evolution of our consciousness and the dance we're having with our soul. So at one point, probably 15 or 20 years ago now, I was only hooked into everything needs to stay the same. Why? Because that's where I felt safe. As soon as I figured something out, I didn't want it to change because I didn't feel safe in change. Change brought things that made me question whether I was smart enough, whether I was good enough, whether I was lovable enough, whether they would see me. So anything that was change brought up an opportunity for me not to be seen, not to be heard, not to be understood, not to be loved. And now I'm kind of like, well, the most important person to love me is me. I do. So let's see some change. Like, let's see what more is possible if we tweak this or tweak that. And so raising consciousness is an everyday for the totality of my life dance.
Yes.
And I'm digging it.
It is fun. So with me, I've been like push, 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 make things happen, right? Like achieve. And so I've been learning a lot about the laws of the universe and about manifestation and about co-creating with the universe and about letting it go. And so I decided this year, okay, my word of the year is being. I'm going to be more, do less. So like on breaks, I go lay out. I've got a big front yard. I go lay out in the grass and put my feet in the grass and look up at the sun. And I'm not spending my day just checking things off the list. And more is happening in my life than would be if I was trying to push it to happen. So if you can experiment with that, if you can like let go of trying to control and experiment with it, you will see when people say the universe is abundant and this kind of stuff, it's like you start to really believe it because it's happening to you.
Yes, yes, yes. And you can see the thing about pushing, believe it or not, I've come to realize that pushing in my life was a sign of resistance. Mm. So what is it a resistance of? Mm-hmm. When we're pushing to quote unquote make things happen, show them we're worthy to do all that stuff, what we're resisting is what is.
Yeah.
Right? What is. We can't always change it. And when we're pushing and fighting and this word fight has really gotten to be just something that makes my skin crawl. I don't want to keep fighting for things. I feel like I've fought most of my life to have what I thought was going to make me happy. And then I would get it and it didn't. But fighting and pushing in our lives to make things turn out a certain way is a form of resistance of the way they are, the way they're unfolding. Now, that's not to say we never stand up and say, no, this crosses my boundaries, or that we don't say, this societal dynamic I am against and I'm going to do something about it. It's not what I want to support. It's another one of those both ands. Like I will release resistance. Like I'm not going to fight racism. This is a Mother Teresa-ism. I'm not going to fight war, but I will march for peace. Mm-hmm. So I spend less time trying to quote unquote fight racism and do more to build racial equity. And that feels like something more positive, powerful, and expansive. So it's the same principle in just our lives. When we can let go of the resistance of what is and just kind of move through with less of our guard up, then we can actually drop into flow. And all those universal laws are operating anyway, 24/7, 365. Right. So I'd rather activate myself in flow than activate myself in resistance.
Right, for sure. So Chandra asks, are there specific questions you can ask yourself that call forth your divine energy and or leverage the universal laws?
Absolutely. So I don't often ask questions. If I'm going to call forth universal energy, I state it emphatically. So you may know these as affirmations. So I like to stand in my I am presence. I am is from the Bible, biblical term. So this isn't about religion now, though, but this is a reference point, the name, the way that the divine introduced itself. I am that I am is the name of the divine, in one body of work around the divine. I am that I am. And so I am statements are very powerful statements. And we have to be careful what we put after I am. So I say now I'm feeling hungry, not I am hungry, because I don't want to create a state of being known as I'm hungry, whether that's physiologically, mentally, or emotionally. So you can use the same principle. What is it that you want to create in your relationship with your spiritual self? So I might say things like, I'm fully connected at all times to my higher self, the divinity within me. I'm fully connected at all times with my higher self, the divinity within me. I always say, I've said this for a long time, even before I fully understood what I was saying. God moves in, through, around, and as me now, directing me to my highest good. And I am receiving. I didn't even know what I was saying. I thought I did, but now I know the full weight of that. So yes, Chandra, absolutely. You can devise your own. They don't have to be some specific body of words that I give you. You could ask yourself, so self, higher self, always make sure you're asking your highest self, because otherwise your wounded self might give you some ideas. They won't be horrible, but they might not just be your highest and best. What more could I say? What works just for where I am in this moment? You're having a difficult conversation with someone, and you could say, my divine mind is helping me feel peace and love in the midst of this difficult conversation. My heart is open to all the possibilities where right now my mind can only see closed doors. There's so many beautiful ways, and you don't have to be eloquent. You could just say, an answer is mine now.
Yeah. Well, this sounds kind of woo-woo, somebody might say, right?
Yes. You know why? Yay for woo-woo was, I don't know if that you were going to stop there, Emily. Were you going to stop?
That's fine.
There?
No, yeah. Go ahead.
So woo-woo just means it's not explainable by the five senses. That's all. It doesn't mean it's way out of this world. It's BS. It got a really bad rap because people started making it a derogatory thing to say woo-woo. But when you actually look deeper underneath the real true meaning, it just means not explainable by our mental faculties, that linear thinking of A plus B equals C, and by the ideas that we have to understand it with our five senses or it doesn't exist. It's sort of like in the linear world, it's seeing is believing. That's the scientific structure of how we test hypotheses and prove them to be true or false. Seeing is believing. And then there's the noetic sciences perspective, which is believing is seeing. I wouldn't see it unless I believed in it. So if I'm not seeing it, I might have to shift my perspective about whether it could possibly exist. I might have to go deeper into faith and less into intellect. Faith, right brain. Yeah. Believing, seeing is believing, left brain.
Got it. So you wrote something here when you were submitting some information to me, like, if you want more peace, stop taking the monkey.
Yes, I did.
What does that mean?
I don't remember doing it, but I guess I did. That sounds like me.
Yeah. What does that mean?
So I just have to shout out to a former boss, Ed Burkhardt. I reported to him at Procter & Gamble. And sometimes when I'd be in his office lamenting how all the things that were just not right and how people weren't treating me, and it's like there's just too much to do here. And I was, caving under the overwhelm. And he would say, you know what your problem is? In a very loving and kind way, one of the best people I've ever worked with or for. You got to stop taking the monkey. And he said it just like that. And I was like, what on earth? Like, okay, can I have a decoder ring? Mm-hmm. He used to have a sign on his desk that said training is happening now. And he would bring that off of his desk. We'd be sitting at a round table. He'd bring that off of his desk. You got to stop taking the monkey. And I'm like, okay, tell me what that means. And it just means get the monkey off your back. And most of the time when like there was a monkey on the back, I was the one who put it there. Yeah. So, and that behavior showed up as we might be all sitting in a meeting and somebody would come up with an idea, and then we'd say, okay, so who's gonna start the ball rolling? And nobody would speak up. And so what did Valerie do? Raise her hand. Yeah. And Valerie would be sitting there going, I'm not going to raise my hand. I'm not going to raise my hand. I'm not going to raise my hand. Well, what's that? Resistance. Valerie's not raising her hand. And the next thing Valerie would do is raise her hand. And part of that was driven by the conditioning of, they won't like me. I won't be successful. I won't get promoted. I won't get better assignments unless I take the crappy ones. I had a whole mental story about that. But don't take the monkey means notice when you are creating your own overwhelm. Notice when the monkey on your back is of your own design. So like another example, Emily, is when people say, there's too many things on my plate. I'm so busy. And being busy has become like a red badge of courage. Like, I'm so busy. Yeah, but why? Well, there's just so much to do. Well, who said that? And then when you ask enough questions, what usually happens is the person realizes the busyness in my life is of my own creation.
That's what I realized.
Yeah. The overwhelm in my life is of my own creation. If I feel like I'm stressed and behind schedule, it's because I made the schedule.
Yeah. 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 And I had a deputy once who had her issue was, she felt like she wanted to help people, right? So you could have that pleaser saboteur, right? Where you're in your mind where you want to help people and you feel like that's your responsibility. And so I got her one of those barrels of monkeys. And I said, imagine, if you really imagine, when you say monkey, but if you just imagine Valerie comes in my office, she sits down and she tells me all her problems in this challenge. And I say, okay, leave it here. I'll review it. I'll see if I can help you. I've taken your monkey and you've left. And imagine you've got an office full of monkeys all running around. Kick them out.
Exactly. And you know what, Emily, I don't mean for this to be pointed or negative, but the truth of the matter is, just like there are people who have people-pleasing tendencies, there are people who are very adept at not taking the monkey. And in fact, some of those people are very adept at noticing who in the office or who in the family or who in the friend network or who on the soccer team or in the PTA, noticing who is the one who always takes the monkey. And they sit there very beautifully and don't say a word. And sometimes they might even say, well, Valerie, this is one of those things you like doing, isn't it? You want to jump in and take care of it. And I really had to work hard. I can still feel some energy of fear coming up with it. I can still feel it. It's okay. Of saying no.
Yeah.
Valerie, isn't this what you do? Yeah, but no, I'm not going to do this one. Thanks.
I can feel the energy too. For me, it's like, it's a little uncomfortable, but the more you do it and realize, hey, it feels better actually. And the job still got done somehow and life didn't stop. And
yeah.
So tell us about, I want to hear, let's see. Yeah, I could talk to you forever. I want to hear, number one, about like what you've learned from your stroke. You're a stroke survivor. And then I want to hear about your book.
Okay. They're related.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't believe that I could have gotten through this almost 7 years of post-stroke experience of my life if it weren't for the teachings that I capture in the book. So the book was written and was supposed to be released in August. The book was supposed to be released in August of 2015. The stroke happened on June 5th of 2015. And a lot of people think when they pick up my book that they're going to see a whole bunch of stroke references in it. There's not one reference to the stroke in the book because the book was done. It was just waiting to be released. And so there's nothing in the book that's specific to having a stroke or a catastrophic anything. There are a lot in the book about the things that we're talking about, the way our lives end up looking like our lives or being our lives, and the way we might resist what's in them and how to go about living them. And the stroke was an opportunity. It was a brain hemorrhage. I think the numbers are brain hemorrhages are like less than 20%, more like 15% of all strokes. And the people who have brain hemorrhages, many or most, or I would say most of them are pretty debilitated afterwards, and many don't survive.
Wow. And
so my experience has its ongoing debilitations, and we're doing all kinds of things to play with them. And the steps in the 4-step process that's in my book are what I believe have helped me get as far as I've gotten. I was at an event this past weekend, in fact, and I started shooting archery as an attempt to rehab my right side. I'm right side dominant. And so the whole act of having to pull a bow back and try and shoot with it is a way of getting some muscle memory and loosening up some of the spasticity and just working with the nerves and all the dynamics going on my right side. And I was at an event this past weekend, and there was a emergency room nurse there, and he was watching me move around and stuff in the space. And he said, "So is it MS or Parkinson's?" And I said, "Neither. It was a brain hemorrhage." And he said, his face got really wrinkled up and his eyes got really big. And he said, "What?" And I said, "It was a brain hemorrhage." And he goes, "Oh my God, like, what are you doing still here?"
Wow. Valerie.
That's how, now this is an ER room nurse. And he said over and over that day, "I've never seen this before. It's a miracle. Like, you're walking around." I know lots of people like you who, if they're lucky, they're able to get into a wheelchair. So as much as I have lots of aspects of my life that I'm not active in anymore, or right now, for now, to me, that's like, oh my God, the end of the world. And to others who are looking at me, it's amazing. So I had to learn to walk again. At first, I thought I was going to have to learn to speak again, but my speech all dropped in. And I believe that was because of the teachings that I carry and walk and talk. When I first woke up and I tried to speak and it came out like gibberish, instead of freaking out and going into no, like, where's my voice? And I kind of remember very vividly saying, "I'm a speaker, a teacher, and a healer, and I cannot speak." And then I kind of went, oh, well, if Stephen Hawking can do it, I guess I can too. And then I went back out and I woke up like a day later. And when I woke up, all of my speech had dropped in. Now, I still feel like I slur my words. I still have aphasia. So there are times when the words aren't coming. I can't get them. And there are times when I stutter a little, but most people don't hear it as much as I do. So I still have residual effects, nerve damage, nerve activity. I won't say damage, nerve activity, hyper nerve activity, spasticity, all kinds of stuff on the right side of my body, from the tip of my head down to my toes. I have trouble walking and standing because my toes don't lay out perfectly flat. And when I'm walking or standing, I have to talk to them. So one of my physical therapists said, talk out loud and your body will hear you. That's why it's so important that we be careful what we say about our bodies, because our bodies hear us. So when you're telling people, oh, my hair, oh, I can't stand this donut up on the center of my stomach, I can't stand how my feet do. Like, whenever we're saying that, and I used to for years say my bad knees. Well, boy, have my knees conformed to that idea. So I talk to my feet and I say, okay, toes, lay out flat. When I'm going down the stairs, because I get scared and I hang on, I talk to myself and I say, relax, shoulders back, hips under, eyes up. Every time, every set of stairs, I'm saying the same thing over and over. Shoulders back, hips under, eyes up. It takes a lot of energy. I will tell you that, mental energy to like stay on top of it. And, what is more important than my relationship with myself and my masterfully created by the divine earth suit that my soul gets to travel around in the planet Earth.
That's awesome.
This book just carries the tips and tools and tricks and the process to help people do this no matter what they're facing. So maybe, for some people, it's not a brain hemorrhage. For some people, it's a miscarriage. For other people, they lost a limb. For other people, they're coming back from battle with PTSD. For other people, it's the loss of a child. It's not a suffering Olympics. Like, some people hear me talk about the stroke and they say, oh, I feel so bad that I have any complaints at all. Your life is so difficult. And I'm like, please don't do that to yourselves. It's not about that. It's not a suffering Olympics. Like, I have somehow more suffering than anybody else. We all have our challenges in our lives, and they're all very specific to what's going on with us. And the opportunity that we have is to look deeply into them and see what's unfolding in the midst of the challenge that gives us opportunity for like the great awakening, the great freedom, the great joy? Like, where does the great come from? Right in the midst of that thing being the exact same way. Like, not when it's over. People used to say, you'll get back to your normal life. Like we've been saying about COVID. When is it going to be over? I want to get back to normal. And it's like, well, you know what? What if it never is?
Right. You can just wait around for things to get back to normal. And, you know, I mean, let's live our life now. That's why this show is on, like, create a life you love living now. Not
no matter what.
When this happens or that happens. And if that happens.
In the midst of all of this. He doesn't like me. She's acting a fool. This job stinks. Like, in the midst of all of that, let's figure out, okay, who do I have to be in myself to have all of these things fall into the right rhythm for me? That's right. The other part of that too, Emily, is we can jump on bandwagons a lot. And I think that comes from our psychological and sociological need to belong. Like, and that goes all the way back to caveman days, tribal days, where it wasn't safe to be alone. So we always looked for, you know, who can we hitch our cart to, because there's safety in numbers. And as true as that might be, and as buried as that might be in our limbic brain, which is responsible for what people know as the fight, flight, freeze syndrome, as true as that might be, we're not in danger. 99% of the time in our lives, we're not in danger. So we need to notice, hey, I'm letting the limbic brain run me. I don't need to belong. Like, I don't need to agree to something that I don't really agree to just so I feel safe. I can actually just be quiet, zip it. Don't nod your head in affirmative if that's not what you believe. Don't say thumbs up when you're like, no, I disagree. You don't have to run into the void and like teach everybody. And you really need to be true to yourself. You really need to be willing to, it's a real dichotomy. It's a real paradox of life that we so much want to belong. And at the same time, we want to be seen for who we are and for our uniqueness. And so we have to nurture both activities going on.
Yeah. It, like you said here, your life is happening for you. Happiness is an inside game. No matter what the circumstances, we can find happiness if we look inside.
Yes. And I would offer that looking inside is a when, not an if. It's a when, and it should be 100,000 times a day.
Yeah.
The answers are already inside you. Like, metaphysically speaking, you already came here knowing what your journey was going to be like. So why look out there for the answers? Awaken to them on the inside. Allow yourself to get quiet enough that you can hear something besides your mental chatter and all your intellectual knowing, and allow your heart to speak, which speaks the soul voice, the intuitive voice, and travel on a different path that is built from the inside out.
That is something that I didn't know how to do, because I'd get up, wake up, get up, get dressed, get a shower, maybe go to the gym, go to work, kick off all my tasks, go take care of my kids, do this, do that, finally crash and go to bed. Not creating any time to hear that intuitive voice.
And it's interesting because what you're describing was me as well. Although I had some time in there for champagne and oysters on the half shell and, a couple parties here and then with my girlfriends.
Mm-hmm.
So that life was still driven from the inside to a large extent. The places that it was being driven from were low vibration, low consciousness, fear, and what I call the false self. Others call it that as well. So it's not original to me, but the false self, the shadow self. You might have heard that term. Like, it's the self that is created through the twists and turns of our lives, the situational dynamics, that we interpret, and then we turn that interpretation into meaning something's not right, or something's not good, or something's not lovable, or something's not valuable, or something's not cherished about us. And the situation may not have had anything, and most of them didn't have anything to do with us. What other people are showing us is who they are, what their conditioning has been, how they think about life, how they have relationships with other people. And we take it on as though it's something about us. They wouldn't treat me that way if they loved me. Well, actually, they might not know what love is. And so the way they're treating you is just the way they know how to treat you at this moment in their life, not necessarily about you and your life.
So we got to wrap it up in a minute, but Chandra said, did you say limbic brain? Please share more.
Yes. So the limbic, it's the primitive brain. It's at the back of your head near the top of the brain stem. And it's known as the reptilian brain. So it's got stuff in there. The reptilian brain is stuff that can be handed down. We're now finding out through epigenetics that things can come in through our DNA. So a familial PTSD could be handed down through generations. They've proven this with soldiers and with others. There are hypotheses around generational dynamics that have to do with it. The limbic brain is the fight, flight, freeze syndrome. It comes from there. It comes from a survival mode. And so the amount of time that we're spending in survival mode can show us how much time we're spending in the space of, if I don't perform a certain way, I'm not safe. And those are coming from this part of the brain where we have stored experiences and memories that tell us danger is out there and we're not safe in our own skin. We're not safe in our neighborhoods. We're not safe around certain kinds of people or certain situations. Those messages are coming from stored markers in our systems. That's a non-scientific way of talking about it.
Non-scientific way of talking about it from someone who's got a PhD in this stuff. So thank you for simplifying it for people like me. I appreciate that. I wanted to share a couple other captions. You've got a gift here with the link, and this is to a free webinar. What's the webinar on?
So this is how you soar, and it gives you 3 very specific, practical in your life today. It's not esoteric stuff. It's very practical. People talk up to me all the time about, how do I have the most magnificent life? How do I get everything I want? And I call that soaring. Like, soaring in life is having the most magnificent life. And how do you soar in your life when there are anchors holding you down? And so this webinar is to show 3 of the places where people are trying to do it, only they can't get very far because they have anchors from inside them that are keeping them tethered to the ground. So it's about a 30-minute webinar. And everybody who goes to the URL, you can also book in a quick conversation with me after you've seen the webinar. And maybe there's some more that I can help you see that's possible for how you apply those 3 steps or others.
Awesome. And then you have a Facebook group.
I do. Yeah. The Bliss Collective. Yes. The Bliss Collective is a group of about 700 some odd strong at this time. So it's a nice, intimate group. And we are a community on a mission to create a movement to have more peace, love, joy, and freedom on the planet, starting with ourselves. So we are all committed to looking at ourselves like, how can I be more peaceful today? Because then there's more peace on the planet. How can I bring more happiness in? How can I be more compassionate, more tolerant, more loving, more caring, more giving? And we look at the principles in my book and from other places. And there are Facebook Lives in there and all kinds of stuff. And we are in community to grow ourselves into a higher consciousness in service to ourselves and the planet. And that's free.
Oh, awesome.
So is the webinar.
Yeah. And your book costs a little bit, but it's worth it for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. And if there's anybody who feels like they can't afford the book, to buy it at Amazon or even buy it on my website, it's 25% off at my website. If you don't feel like that's something you can do, that's okay. There is a link on my website, and I think it says From My Heart to Yours. and it's a free downloadable PDF. It's a 300 some odd page PDF, so it may take a little bit to download depending on your speeds for downloading, but you're more than welcome to get it free or to share it with someone else free.
Thank you, Valerie, for being on my show. And I can see why you survived that stroke, because you still have a lot to give to the world, and you still are giving a lot. I appreciate you,
Emily. Thank you so much. That's so kind and generous to say.
I'm so glad that we met. I learned so much from you, and thank you to everybody who joined us. Yeah, Chandra said that's so kind of you to give that book. Sure is.
Thanks, Chandra. Thanks, Russ. Thank you, everyone else, for being here. Appreciate you.
Thank you, everybody who joined us tonight. Elizabeth, I know you joined us, and you said when we were talking about the monkeys, another phrase I've heard is "don't run into the burning fire." Yeah. So.
Oh boy, have I done that.
Yep. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Thank you, Valerie, for being on my show. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you guys. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week, hopefully, if you can make it. I'm going live just about every Wednesday at 7:30. I'm not going to go live over the summer. Some of the summer, I'm taking some time off for self-care. And the other thing is that on 25 May is going to be my 3-year anniversary for this show. And I think I wanted it to be episode 200, but I think it's going to be 199. So, oh well. Close to 200 episodes. And, being that achiever that I have been in my life, I have tended to not celebrate my accomplishments. And I'm definitely celebrating 3 years of podcasting because it takes a lot of work. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And hopefully I'll see you guys next week. Onward Live is sponsored by Emily Harmon Coaching and Consulting. Visit my website, emilyharmon.com, to learn more about me and my coaching programs. I'd love to help you create a life you love living. Remember, every adversity is our own personal university. Sometimes the lessons are difficult, and we must learn from our experiences. Vulnerability is your superpower. You are lovable and worthy. And we discuss these topics and more because professional is personal. Thank you for joining us and engaging with me and my guest. I look forward to